What's up? It's Susie from Hey Girl Hey. We're back on the back deck today. We're conducting a rib experiment. We are cooking 3-2-1 ribs and low and slow ribs side by side, and then the whole gang comes in for a taste test because I've heard it from you. 3-2-1 ribs are overcooked, or 3-2-1 ribs are my favorite. I wanted to cook them side by side and see what we thought and help you decide what are the best backyard ribs for you. Let's do it. For our side-by-side rib cook, I have 2 racks of St. Louis spare ribs. These are both the same brand, same grocery store. A little bit different size, but they should cook similarly enough that we can get a decent comparison. Now, a lot of the arguments against 3-2-1 ribs is that they get mushy or they get dry. We're trying to combat that early. With ribs that are really well marbled. Lots of flecks of fat in here, beautiful rosy pink color. These are gonna be delicious. Like, I think no matter how you cook these ribs, they'll turn out great because they look so fabulous. So we're just gonna start by prepping each of them by taking the membrane off of the back, which is that thin, papery, white membrane. The membrane doesn't help in any way to make the ribs better. In fact, I think it leaves like a papery, chewy finish. So I always like to take mine off, but there are multiple camps on membrane removal as well. Some people would argue very hardly against the removal of the membrane, but I always like to do it. I just get my fingernail under the edge of the membrane, grab the membrane with a paper towel, and then lift it away. Sometimes it comes off in one piece, sometimes it doesn't. Now with the membranes removed, I'm gonna give each of these a slather and a season. We want this to be a fair comparison, so we're using the same slather, the same seasoning, cooking them on the same smoker at the same temperature. We're keeping as many variables under control as we can so that we can really taste the difference in the ribs themselves. So I'm gonna do a light slather with my zesty gold sauce. You can use mustard as a binder. You can skip the binder if you're not a binder person, but anything I can do to add layers of flavor, I'm all about it. I'm also gonna season each of them with my rib rub. Now these recipes for the Zesty Gold and the rib rub are available on my site or my app. However, if you wanna save yourself a step, you can buy them from the Hey Girl Hey store. There's a link below the video in the description. Now that my ribs are slathered and seasoned, I'm gonna pop them on the smoker. I've got the pellet smoker running at 225 degrees Fahrenheit. One of these is going unwrapped the whole time, low and slow. See if we can get a nice crunchy bark on the outside. The others are getting the 3-2-1 method, which I'll explain in a minute. But first, let's get these on the smoker. So while the ribs are on, let's talk about the 3-2-1 cooking method. Now this was designed to make smoking ribs easy. 3 hours seasoned in the smoker, 2 hours wrapped in liquid in foil, and 1 hour finished with sauce. Now the purpose behind 3-2-1 ribs is to be a stepping stone for people getting into backyard barbecue, learning how to smoke ribs, and are probably really accustomed to ribs that fall completely off the bone, because I know that's who I grew up liking them and eating them was fall off the bone ribs was the goal. 3-2-1 ribs are designed to give you that melt in your mouth, fall off the bone texture and consistency. I consider this more like steak doneness. Some people like a medium rare steak, some people like a medium well done steak. With ribs, some people like them to fall off the bone, other people like them to have a little more texture and chew. To me, the difference is all about preference. So cooking these side by side, I'll be able to show you kind of what each slice looks like, how they feel, how they taste, and then you can do your own experiment at home. What I don't want you to do is yell at me in the comment section. If you don't like 3-2-1 ribs, that is fine. But that doesn't mean that other people can't enjoy fall off the bone ribs. There's no gatekeeping in good barbecue. We want people to cook barbecue that they like in their own backyards. That's what it's all about. Ribs have been on 3 hours, 225. That means we're ready for phase 2 of the 3-2-1 ribs, which is 2 hours in a braised foil pouch. Now I'm gonna be braising my ribs with honey and brown sugar and butter and apple juice. One of the reasons that I actually like 3-2-1 ribs is because during this braising step, I can take an opportunity to introduce flavor into the meat itself. So we have the butter and the brown sugar and the honey. I really like a sweet rib, so these 3-2-1 ribs let me pull a little extra sweetness into the meat itself. If you've ever cooked like my apple jalapeno ribs or the fireball peach ribs, you know that we add even extra zhuzh into the foil wrap in the form of sliced jalapenos and peaches to really pack the flavor into the meat itself. So that's what we're gonna do here. I'm also gonna do a quick temp check just so that we can see where the ribs are at after 3 hours. Perfect. Okay, we're about between 150 and 160 on each of these racks. So I'm gonna pull off one of them, leave the other one on, and then get it wrapped up. Now before I lay my ribs down, I like to go meat side down on the foil. I'm gonna put a little bit of butter underneath the ribs so that can influence the meat itself, a drizzle of honey, and a little bit of that brown sugar. This is a pretty good extra step for backyard barbecue. In the competition space, when they wrap ribs, I've seen competition teams wrap ribs with like 1.5 cups of sugar and a cup of Kerrygold butter. Like they really go sweet and super sticky on those comp style ribs when they wrap. I'm happy with the honey and the butter and the sugar. I want to add a little bit of liquid, so I'm going to add some apple juice. I'm going to fold the edges of my foil up so I kind of make a little bit of a boat to hold in that liquid. Now you don't need too much liquid in here. We're not trying to boil the ribs, but a little bit of liquid, like 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup, is enough to build up some steam and some high heat energy and really break down those tight connective tissues that live in between each of the rib bones. Now press tightly and get as much air out as you can without breaking the bones through the foil. Heavy duty foil is great for this step. And they are gonna go back on the smoker for 2 hours to braise. This braising step is what's gonna make these ribs fall off the bone tender and melt in your mouth. Now, as I'm wrapping my ribs, I'm noticing my unwrapped ribs are looking a little bit dry and crunchy on the outside. I wanna spritz these, I wanna keep moisture in the ribs. A little bit of moisture on the outside actually can help with the bark development as well. So I'm just gonna spritz with a little bit of apple juice, and I'll probably hit those unwrapped ribs with the apple juice every 45 minutes to an hour for the remainder of the cooking process. We're done with our 2-hour wrapping period. It's time to move on to our final step, 1 hour with sauce. I'm gonna test the temperature of both racks of ribs, give the unwrapped ribs another spritz. What I anticipate and what typically happens is my wrapped ribs will be done. They will be cooked all of the way through. I think my unwrapped ribs are still gonna need a little bit more time. But let's crack them open and see what we got in there. Yeah. So even without taking temperature, you can see on these wrapped ribs, super exposed bones. That means that the meat has retracted, it has pulled back. A lot of that tight connective tissue is gonna be dissolved. Our ribs are clocking. Oh yeah, they done. We up above 200 degrees. So these ribs are fully cooked. Now, the last hour of having them sauced really isn't gonna do much to finish cooking the ribs, right? It's gonna set our sauce, add some more smoke flavor to the outside, and give us a beautiful, shiny, mahogany finished rib. I'm gonna drain off the excess liquid, get the meat back on the rack, and get the sauce on it. So you can see the difference at this point between these 2 racks of ribs. The pullback on the bones of the wrapped ribs is so much more significant. They have so much more bend. They're quite a bit more tender. But these unwrapped ribs, the goal here is for them to have a little bit more bite, a little bit more chew, a little bit more texture to them. So I'm not super worried about them being less cooked than the 3-2-1 ribs at this point. The goal here is to see the comparison between the two. And the 3-2-1 ribs we know will give us that fall off the bone texture, which is exactly what we're going for. So all in all, I'm happy. I'm gonna hit both of these with whiskey peach sauce for the last hour, let them roll, and then my mouth is already watering. I finally will get to taste them. We definitely have a darker color and a darker bark on these ribs that were not wrapped at all. That is one of the most unfortunate losses, I think, of any barbecue that you wrap, whether it's ribs or brisket. Sometimes you do lose that, crunchy, dark mahogany bark on the outside when it goes into foil. So I'm ready for it. I'm ready for a side by side. We gotta wait 1 more hour, and we'll come back, look at both of these ribs side by side, cut them open, give a beautiful cross section and a taste test so we can see how they turn out. In the last hour, I had a friend come home from school, and he came home hungry. So Benny's gonna help us taste test. I've got 2 racks of ribs. I cooked them 2 different ways. 3-2-1 ribs, which should be like fall off the bone, melt in your mouth.
I love that type of ribs.
Yes, and then like some low and slow ribs that might have a little bit more like bite and texture to them. So we're gonna try a bite of each. We're gonna crack them open and check the temperature. Do you wanna be my temperature tester? The child is good with a thermometer. He has been raised well. Okay, first one.
They look the same.
They look really similar in color, don't they? First one says, oh, get it in the meat, not on the bone. There you go.
175.
All right, 175. So we know these ones went up above 200, finished. After we sauced them, it actually dropped the temperature down. Where are our back ones at? Give me a read.
175.
Also 175. Now these ones didn't get up as high as the other ones, and normally I take my ribs up to like 195 or so. So those might be a little bit extra chewy with the no wrap 225.
That's okay. I like it when they're chewy also.
Okay, well let's see what happens. I mean, they're bending pretty good. They might be okay. They look juicy.
They're juicy.
Yeah.
Well, how long have they been on?
Both have been on for 6 hours at 225 degrees.
You know, I think that's good enough.
You think that's plenty? You think it'll be cooked enough? Okay. All right, we're gonna cut these up and give them a taste test. Which one would you like to try first?
This one, because it looks more juicy.
This one looks juicier. All right, from looking at them, it appears as though the unwrapped rack looks a little juicier. That's a good looking rib from the cut of it.
I mean, I
We've
touched
got-
it and it tastes good.
You licked it off. So we've got a good smoke ring. I really like the color on the outside of these no wrap ribs. The bark is beautiful.
It's still
Definitely has a lot of moisture in there. Just cutting and looking at them. That's a juicy looking rib. You're right, Benj.
Is it hot?
Mmm. That's hot, but good.
It's good.
Yeah, very juicy. More texture, like you can see my bite went through, but it didn't pull off the bone. It didn't fall off the bone. It definitely isn't melt in your mouth. You're gonna have a little bit more texture,
It's still too hot.
a little bit more bounce on the rib, but it's a bite through rib. Tastes very smoky. That's yummy. I'm not sad about these at all. What do you think?
Oh, good.
They're good. They're good.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on to the next rack. Are you ready? Try these fall off the bone ribs, Benj.
Yeah.
I wonder, should we try an experiment?
I'm taller than you now.
Let's try an experiment.
Just like rip it. Oh, rip out the bone. Oh my gosh. Go fetch.
Go fetch. I don't think we could have done that with this one, do you?
No.
Yeah, we're not getting the bone off of those back ones. That's more attached. But that one, a twist and a pull, and it slid right out. So they definitely are fall off the bone. Mission accomplished. Now, the biggest complaint people have about 3-2-1 ribs is that they're overcooked. When ribs fall off the bone, that means they're overdone and they're dry. So we have to test and see if these are dry ribs. You don't think so?
No.
Okay. I mean, looking at them, good smoke ring, good moisture from a visual perspective. Let's see how they're like on the texture. You ready? What do you
I
think?
definitely say they're pretty dry.
You think they're dry?
Not very dry, but I'm just saying way drier than those ones.
I would agree.
Yeah. But I think they're personally better.
Flavor's better, huh?
Yeah.
They're sweeter.
But this is way more juicy, like.
I don't disagree, Benj. So, 3, 2, 1, ribs. Fall off the bone. Awesome flavor. Probably from the brown sugar and the butter and honey that we wrapped them with.
I can taste the brown sugar.
It actually does taste a little bit more like brown sugar and honey. So flavor that we got in the meat itself, superior. But they are a little bit more dry. The other ones retained a little bit more juiciness. What do you think about the texture?
I mean, I think the texture is really good.
You like the texture?
I'm
They
not-
melt in your mouth?
Yeah, I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at them being dry.
Because they have so much flavor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because like the texture of it. I just,
All right, so if you had to pick one right now,
if I had to pick that one.
3, 2, 1 ribs?
Yeah.
I might be the 3, 2, 1 ribs also. The flavor inside the meat really is spectacular. So I think that's the takeaway, okay? If you want easy, don't worry about it. Put it on, set it, and forget it ribs. You are gonna have a fantastic, delicious, smoky rib that's really juicy. If you wanna play with layers of flavor, if you want ribs that fall off the bone, 3, 2, 1 might be for you. In my opinion, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think they are both very, very delicious. And Benny and I got a really good after-school snack today, so it's a win-win for us.
I didn't eat much for lunch.
What do you didn't eat much for lunch? Well, and Mama's got you with some ribs. What do you want to tell our friends here on the camera?
Thank you.
And?
You should watch more of our videos.
Great. You heard it from the kid. We'll see you guys next time.